Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this session with Mark and I. We're going to talk a little bit about what we feel is important to helping create a thoughtful classroom environment, as well as a really interesting and cool external environment for our students on campus. And this is all drawn from our own personal experience. We titled this Making a Ridiculously Cool and Memorable Student Experience Inside the Classroom and Out. And of course, with Mark being involved, we had to incorporate the dynamic of food. And part of the message here is how there is sort of an interconnectedness between how our students essentially perform in the classroom, how well they are in terms of their engagement level, and their diet and how well they take care of themselves. So there's sort of a fine balance between that. There's a couple of videos we're going to kick off with, which are interesting. These will be obviously available on the faculty website, and you can watch them better there, but I'll just play them to get things started. Just give me 1 second here and we'll rock and roll. And hopefully you'll be able to see these. If not, you can click the link on the handouts when you see them online.
How important is innovation? How important is oxygen to life? I mean, I don't know any other way to define innovation other than it's what drives us to the next level. From the first time a human being got in a machine that's heavier than air and moved a couple 100 feet, it was one human lifetime later that a guy was walking on the moon and came back. That's a lot of innovation in 60 years. Our success is measured more or less by the rate of innovation. Innovation is what drives the human spirit. And those people, sadly, and there are plenty of them now in this country, that either take it for granted or think things were good enough, are living with a delusion.
So why incorporate this thought of innovation within the context of the presentation? Well, as you just heard from the gentleman on the screen, innovation essentially is what drives everything. How we think about our own thinking is critical. And so just a perspective to put in there. Another video focuses on disruptive innovation, which is very interesting as well. This is about another minute, and then we'll jump into some of the presentation.
I think innovation is bringing non-traditional solutions to traditional problems. Simply put, the most interesting type of innovation is the disruptive innovation that Clay Christensen talks about. And that's when you're fundamentally taking a product or a service or a solution and disrupting the marketplace and bringing that in a new way.
So, the reason I like that very short video is because she talks about this sort of disturb and enable process. And I think part of creating a memorable experience for students is, providing a context to them to where you're almost frustrating them to a level where they feel, I don't want to say helpless, but where they feel, hey, what is this all about? But that we create within our classrooms, and also what's happening outside the classroom through whether it's advising, student activities, opportunities for students to be in the community, doing volunteer work, or other levels of engagement, that we're enabling them to be innovative, to think about how they fit within the overall context of the college, their community, their environment, as well as the relationships that they build. So the rest of today, for about a half hour, Mark and I will kind of go back and forth a little bit, talking a little bit about what we see as important components to innovation in the classroom, which in effect lead to this idea of making a ridiculously cool and memorable student experience both inside and out. So moving forward, I've kind of put this in the context of enabling our students in terms of how they think, and I'm going to take this out of presentation mode because it's extremely annoying, but of how they think to how they sort of act. And then I'll go back to the slide that I had earlier. Can you see that okay? So the impact of thinking. So, in a typical classroom we have we could have 15 different styles of learners and thinkers and creators and innovators. And part of the challenge that we have as faculty, administrators, community leaders is trying to find a way to engage all of those students so they all walk away with a memorable experience. So not to get too theoretical, but one of the things that I like to talk about with my classes, and I kind of put this in the beginning of most classes, is, do you know the kind of thinker you are, and do you know the kind of thinker you can be? Because I might be somebody who's sort of a harmonizer within the classroom, wanting to bring things together if I'm on a team, when somebody else may be somebody who really wants to push the limits or challenge everything that we're trying to do. What if we flip those roles, between those two people? What kinds of things can come from that in terms of innovation, new kinds of thinking, etc. So what do we pay attention to? How and what do we learn? What engages us? Some of you on camera can't see maybe, but I have a bunch of stuff on the table, which is typically what would happen in a classroom that I would teach. They're not distractors, they're actually enablers, especially with adult learners. You want things for people to do in addition to tuning into what you're talking about. So I have some bricks, I have some Legos, which have oftentimes led to some very innovative inventions during a course of a lecture. And at the same time, those students are asking questions while they're sort of using that kinesthetic approach to being tuned into the environment. And there's some other things, bananas and apples, that are meant to be eaten because we are talking about food as well. And then some cards, which are role cards that I oftentimes use in classes to kind of challenge people to think a little bit differently than they typically think. And then from all of this, how do we innovate and what are we successful at? Which is a tough question to ask anybody, just sort of being critical to what am I really good at and where can I really improve. I'm going to skip over that, but this is something, just from a theoretical perspective, each color represents sort of a quadrant of the brain, how we think. You've got intuitive people, you may have very logical people, you may have very organized people, you may have very sort of kinesthetic, emotional, feelings-based students. So how do you, as a faculty member, create a balance of all of this? How do you bring people in? How do you create teams within your within your classroom, or you can call a classroom an organization, a small culture? How do you create, for 16 weeks, a balance between all of that, where those individuals are challenging each other more so than competing with each other? So, any thoughts on that?
Well, these are just personality concepts, and do a lot with that. I was just thinking when you were bringing up the Legos and things like that. A lot of times, if you just kind of pay attention to your surroundings and some of the things that are happening in your life, be a little more conscious about what's going on. I was thinking about one of my family's claim to fame is that my great uncle invented the train hitch, the coupler, and anyway, he was working for a railroad at the time, and in Marshfield, Wisconsin. And back then they had a system where all the train cars fit together with a hinge system. So what would happen is the cars would come together and you'd have to drop a pin in the middle, but a lot of guys were getting killed and everything. And he was at a meeting about it, and they were kind of talking about the program, but it was the way that he was sitting that enabled him to come up with the solution. And he was just sitting like this with his hands together like this, and wasn't even thinking about it so much. And then all of a sudden, I had a conscious moment and looked down, and there was the solution. It was the coupler. So he put it together, and there it was.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So, and off of that, what Mark's saying is, and I've said this in other presentations and with students and everyone, is just being aware of the nowness of things, what's happening around you. And one of the things with this is being connected to yourself and being connected to your own ideas, and I think that's a pretty cool thing. So, and I guess from that point too is ask your students or ask yourself, what's, how close are you to solving that problem? It might be closer than you actually think, which may in part create an even more memorable experience for a student in your class, depending on how you facilitate that. So you can see these better on the presentation that I'll have posted, but essentially you know, as Mark pointed out, in terms of personality, perception, attitudes, what motivates people to see things certain ways, this is based on those 4 quadrants. If there were an accident, how each of these individual people would articulate what they saw. And it's all different. And who's right and who's wrong. So it's a matter of how do you find, you know, sort of a commonality in this? And how do you sort of bring people who might have different perspectives together to have, you know, sort of a stronger perspective or a more refined perspective. One of the things that I think is absolutely critical, and this is sort of where we can talk more about the interconnectedness part with what's happening inside the classroom, what's happening outside the classroom, is really enabling and empowering the students to know themselves, to really understand who they are and how they fit into the context of the college, or how they fit within the context of their community, or their family, or their job. And so with that being said, this is a real simple model, which is knowing yourself is influenced by how well you know the people around you. It's influenced by how well the organization knows you and how well you know the organization. And then in a broader context, it's about how well you are tuned into the world around you, sort of the global perspective. And at the end of the day, you have to understand how you fit within each of these spheres of existence, is what I call them. And that, in a lot of ways, and almost inherently, can create a very positive environment for the student. Because if the students, if that classroom is that middle circle, how does the context of your classroom, what's happening in your classroom, the discussions, the curriculum, the debates, the interaction, how is all of that motivated by what's happening outside the classroom? In terms of maybe it's world affairs, maybe it's what's happening in the local community, what's happening in the local news. What's happening in your life is also, within the appropriate context, might be relevant to helping a student understand something. So something else to think about there. I'll let you read through these on your own, but they're just sort of a breakdown and some quotes that link into these ideas of knowing yourself, knowing others, knowing the organization, and knowing the world. And then some other things here we wanted to flip over to Mark, and he's going to talk about sort of the incorporation of food and in sort of a creative way in motivating students and in creating a positive environment for them. And I can tell you from personal experience, the better you eat, the better you feel, and the more energy you have. So we're going to flip over to Mark. I'm going to disconnect, and then I'll chime in with him. So give us a second.
Okay, it'll just take a minute.
So I will disconnect. And Mark will connect.
We'll see. The
Help yourself.
projector's busy. So
Thank you.
Okay.
Mark is still setting up here, so all right, you're on, Mark.
Okay. Well, what I like to do every so often is talk a little bit about some of the research that's going on with nutrition. And when I started in my profession, I was, I was pretty traditional in my approach when I would talk with folks about depression and some of the other things that were going on with individuals, and I would often try to refer folks to their physicians and look at depression medications as an option. And I was traditional in the way that I approached different neurological disorders, attention deficit disorder, and so forth. And medications were always an option. And the longer that I've been involved with it, I really felt that a lot of times we're treating the symptoms and we really don't get into the problems. And so I've been making the switch to help educate folks that I work with about some of the benefits of eating healthy food and actually try to prevent some of these things from happening to them. So some of the research that I have here has to do with studies that affect different depression disorders and personality, and along with some other things like cancer and heart disease and things like that. So this information can be found on PubMed.gov. It's all free. This is where all the research goes, and it's all cataloged, and it can be accessed by anybody free of charge. I also have a friend of mine who has a website. It's nutritionfacts.org, and on that site, he's a medical doctor. He actually takes some of the more interesting studies that are coming out and talks about them a little bit, and tries to help people apply these things to their lives. But my whole thought is that people will be much more successful in class. You know, if you have students who are sleeping in class and they're tired, or they can't get to class. If you ask a number of questions, 3, 4 questions, usually you're going to come to answers that have to do with not feeling good, not being able to get up, and have to do with physiology. It's real interesting. So I think that food can provide some benefits here. This is the latest research that has come out, and I just kind of put up some of the studies. If you're more interested, we just don't have a whole lot of time here to look at some of these things. So just to sort of give you a preview of some of the things that came out in the last batch, and I get 4 of these a year from that friend of mine, and this is a lot of the stuff that doesn't make it into the mainstream, but it can help you out as an instructor and also help your students. So one of them had to do with treating multiple sclerosis with diet, and basically there's a good basis for finding animal products as a cause for multiple sclerosis. And one of the things that we always had a hard time with, I should say we, but I'm referring to those in the medical community, is especially when folks in the early 1970s were preventing and reversing coronary heart disease. Dr. Pritikin started this, and nobody believed him. And what happened is that this started again in the early 1990s with Dr. Ornish, and then people started believing him. And it was really because of the advent of technology where people had access to MRI machines. Once they had MRI machines, you could get up and you could hold up a picture of a plugged artery and then take a picture again in a few months after they had gone off of animal products and see that it had cleaned out on its own. Well, we're at that point with multiple sclerosis too. We're looking at some of the tissues and the muscles, and right now we have the evidence that it can be reversed with diet, even prevented with diet. Mostly getting animal products out of the diet and shrinking inflammation. But right now there's a study going on. We're going to have the results in probably another month by Dr. McDougall, looking at MRI scans, and actually it looks like it's looking pretty good in that area. So that's one interesting one that came out. There's a lot of breast cancer studies. They come out all the time, and usually they're linking it up with broccoli. That's why I serve broccoli here today. And the sulforaphane in the broccoli, good studies out there. It's just like kryptonite when it comes to cancer, and everybody should be eating broccoli for that anti-cancer vegetable, but especially if you're female, there's some real good studies out there that really back that up. One out there that I thought was kind of interesting too. We've always had a lot of folks would bring up the argument about alkaline, diets that were very acidic because of eating animal products. That there was something going on with their bones, and that because their blood was very acidic, that it would actually take some of the calcium out of the bones. We found out that probably isn't true. In the study here, they actually took people on real high protein animal diets, and they fed them radioactive calcium with it. And they found out that the same calcium that they'd been eating, actually they were excreting that. So that's something that gets talked about a lot, but probably isn't true. But we do know that the diets that are very high in acid are related to high uric acid and kidney stones. So obviously you would probably like to have a a diet that is low in acid, i.e. animal products, and higher in fruits and vegetables, and then you get more of an alkaline diet. And you can actually test the pH in your body if you want. Now you could, when this is kind of funny, but when you go to the bathroom, you can use a pH strip, or if you want to get more creative, you can use purple cabbage. And if you actually put purple cabbage in a blender and strain out all the stuff, and you get that nice purpley liquid, and you dump that into the toilet, and after you've gone to the bathroom, the color will remain purple if you have a high pH. It will turn pink if it's real high. And what you're looking for is a nice blue. If you want to have fun with a little science experiment,
report back to us.
You can use the strips, but go with the purple cabbage. It's much more fun. So that was kind of an interesting one. And again, I have all of the results of these studies if you'd like to look at them a little more in depth. We have a lot of research on eggs and choline and cancer. And eggs, actually the American Egg Institute report is always touting choline as something that's real positive for your body. It's probably something you want to stay away from. In fact, in many instances, we can track the spread of cancer by looking at the amount of choline that's available in different parts of the body. So that might be a good thing too for you to look at. And nice studies on athletic recovery with diet. They actually took a look at marathon runners, ultra marathon runners in this case, and they found out that when they go through an event like that, or when they're exercising, the free radicals, which is something you don't want in your body because they're destroying cells and causing lots of problems, that actually goes up. But then what happens is once you start messing with things and punishing the body a little bit, the antioxidant rates and the amount that it gets absorbed just increases. It spikes like crazy. So sometimes those kinds of activities have been shown to maybe not be healthy, but we're finding out that's probably true in the short term, but then after that the body just kicks into high, and you get lots of benefits from exerting yourself like that. So really good studies out there about increased lifespan from eating beans, and we know that the number one reason that people aren't eating beans is a fear of flatulence. That was another study, but what the study went on to find is that after 2 or 3 days, people get used to eating. When I'm talking about eating beans, we're talking about a half a cup to a cup of beans a day, which can really have some amazing health benefits, and especially in some of the cancer studies that are out there right now. We also know that soy is kind of in and out with people, real popular. And sometimes a study will come out and link it to something maybe that's not as desirable. But in the latest study that I have, there's another breast cancer study, and it says breast cancer. But there's actually a gene that it's the BRCA gene, and that's one that they measure for. About 5% of women have trouble with that, and that's what they measure with, if you're more susceptible to breast cancer. But what we found is that animal products can really mess with this gene, and they can turn it off so that you don't have the protective effects. What we found in the soy study is that the soy actually turns it back on so that you can get the protective effects going on with that BRCA gene. So that was a real interesting thing that happened. Studying cooked beans, if you want to eat beans, cooked beans or canned beans. They have about the same amount of nutrition in, but the canned beans have more sodium. So if you are going to use the canned beans, you can drain them and wash them. That'll take care of about half of the sodium, but then you're also losing some of the nutrients too. So looking for canned beans that are low in sodium is probably a good way to go if you don't want to cook your own beans. They do take a long time to prepare. I always look for the canned beans too from Trader Joe's because they don't have any. They're not lined with biobisphenol, which is an artificial form of estrogen that is toxin in the body, and most of the cans are lined with that. Same way with some of the plastic bottles and things like that. You see BPH free and things like that. That's what that is. But it does end up in your canned food too. So you've got to kind of watch with that. A few companies, they don't put it in there. Trader Joe's is one of them. I think there's a couple others, but you really have to look to find that out. Some information, more information about broccoli receptors. You know, there are lots of studies about broccoli. It just keeps coming up as probably one of the world's greatest vegetables. It has things in it that nothing else has, and eat it, lots of it. There was an interesting study here about dioxins in keeping dioxins out of the body, and obviously one of them was eating large amounts of cruciferous vegetables actually protected your body from the dioxins too. But one animal product was found to kind of do the same thing, and it was this protected was found in camel urine. You know,
which we have available today.
Yes, there's bottles of that over there.
Try some.
It blocks some of the cancer-causing effects of dioxins. You know, so if you can't get your kids to eat the cruciferous vegetables, you know, say, okay, we're getting the camel urine. You choose. And it was, by the way, the camel urine that had the most protectant in it was camel urine from virgin camels. Yeah, I don't know who did this study, but it's kind of interesting stuff that in the world of research, you know, things that they find out. We want to keep phosphates out of the body, especially if you have issues, kidney problems and things like that. Some of the things to be aware of are things related to phosphates being added to things like soda, and phosphate is added to lots of meat too. It's injected into chickens and can really cause a lot of issues with that. A lot of people don't know, but they put it in there because when the meat is breaking down, it doesn't. There's a lot less seepage if the meat is full of phosphates. So be careful about that. Sugary foods. You know, for a long time, you know, people would make comments related to, you know, can you be addicted to sugar? And some of the PET scans out there now are saying that yes, you can. Has the same kind of dopamine receptor blockage that effect on the body that alcoholism and drug use has. So good study on that if you want to know more about that. Because of it, some folks were actually looking at categorizing obesity as a mental health disorder, and there's a study and a paper written on that too, because of doing some things that aren't necessarily good for you, and you still do them anyway. So should that be put in the DSM? I'm not sure, but a real good study there. You know, one of the things too that you look at when you look at studies like that are things like you know, the ability to enjoy some of life's pleasures. You know, if you're not eating healthy food and you have a problem with some of those dopamine receptors being blocked, all of the things that we experience for pleasure can you know, not be as intense. That's why we tend to overeat too. Because when the dopamine blockers are blocked, you know, you tend to eat more of it, and just to kind of get that same feeling, the same way with drinking alcohol after a while. And nice, interesting studies about seafood too. Lots of them coming out with information related to DHA, which is a good thing. This was done on pregnant mothers, and they found out that DHA, you really want that for development in a young child. But then they were measuring mothers who were getting their DHA from things like canned tuna and eating 2 to 3 cans of tuna a week, and finding out that brain shrinkage was about 14% in the kids that were born using the scans again. So there's some of the interesting studies that have come out here within the last quarter, and those are all available down in my office. One of the things that I try to do is tell folks about how to really improve their diets by having very, very high antioxidants in their diet, which you get through fruits and vegetables, and low fat. And I don't know, do we have much time to go into some of that right now? Or
sure.
Kind of at the end. Some of the things that I've brought up in the past are kind of foundation to that. You might have seen these, but some of the studies, just what you drink. Yeah, some beverages have more antioxidants than others. We know that water has 0, and water is very good for you, flushes your body out. But why not put more antioxidants into as many into your body as you can? And the theory behind that is all day you're being exposed to lots of different toxins, and there's different ways that your cells can be injured or broken down, and the antioxidants protect your cells from those free radicals. So flooding your body with as many antioxidants as possible is really the way that you want to go. So water's a good thing, but if you're going to drink something, why not get something with some high antioxidant rates in there? So kind of look here at some of the things, popular drinks that have antioxidants. You see Pepsi Coke have one, Red Bull have one, milk has one, so you're doing okay with that, but you probably already used it up in just in the last 2 seconds here. So you need lots and lots of them. And so, we can make a case for for white wine. It has a lot more. Red tea is pretty good too, but you start getting into tea and you get into the good stuff here. And green tea at 36, grape juice a little bit higher, not a whole food, but still having a lot. Coffee is real good, high in antioxidants. Yeah, there's some toxins in there too, because the acrylamides accumulate when we're roasting the coffee beans. And but look at the biggest one there, hibiscus tea at 132. So you're gonna
per cup.
Per cup, yeah, it's pretty decent. Sweeteners. If you're gonna sweeten something, we've got brown rice syrup in at 1, sugar 2. It's like I don't know if we can beat that. Agave nectar, which is always touted as a real big health food, but in this case, not a lot of antioxidants. Corn syrup. 2, maple syrup, and we're getting warmer now. Lots of lignans in maple syrup too. I don't think we'll have time to go into that, but honey's at 28. Oh my gosh, molasses, just incredible. Look at that. If you live forever, you're starting molasses, and there's one that can beat molasses, believe it or not. That is date sugar at 1,300. So you start eating dates and put those in your diet, you're gonna really feel good. Artificial sweeteners, we'll kind of skip over that one for now. But another little recipe I like to throw out there to get some of that good old hibiscus tea into your body. Put 4 tea bags of hibiscus tea in there. Very cheap in the store. You can get it. It comes as red zinger and some real good flavors and things like that. As long as the first ingredient starts with hibiscus. And put in a little lemon juice. That's going to change the pH and actually bring out some more of those catechins, those antioxidants, and you'll feel real good. Adding lemon to your tea is a good thing because again it changes the pH. So use those lemons. It's also the fruit with the highest amount of protein in it. A lot of people don't know that. And cold steeping your tea is probably the best way to take care of those, to get more antioxidants in your tea. I think we're probably running out of time. But if anybody wants to talk more about diet and health, this is kind of my sideline issue here that I really like to talk about. And feeling better is just affects everything else. And getting your sleep and when we talk about things like innovation, there's been some really good studies about creativity and feeling good and getting sleep, and that's why people are probably the most creative and innovative in the morning, and so to your health.
And to that point, which actually is a perfect segue to kind of bringing this together, what I'll do at the end too is I'll kind of give a little picture of some of the things on the table and talk about them, but there's some pretty cool things that I'll have available online for people. But there's a quote in a book that I recommend that everyone read, and I'm going to have Walt order a couple copies for the library, called Creating Innovators by Tony Wagner. And I actually just read this book over the last week and was inspired by quite a few of the research references. And one of the points Mark just made at the end was the ability to be creative and innovative. It really comes from how we take care of ourselves and how we nourish ourselves. An interesting thing that is here is, according to authors Poe Bronson and Ashley Merriman, it's too early to determine conclusively why the United States of America's creativity scores are declining. One likely culprit is the number of hours, and we're just going to say that people spend in front of the television, playing video games, and I might add, and eating poorly rather than engaging in creative activities. Another is the lack of creativity development in school. And, I think in part that is, where the imperative on our part comes into play in terms of how we create those useful, memorable, and collaborative environments in our classroom, as well as what's happening outside. I mean, how well do we engage students outside of the classroom as well? In effect, it's left to the luck of the draw who becomes creative. There's no concerted effort to nurture the creativity of everyone. So just, not to end on a negative note, but it, I think, goes to that last slide I showed, which was about interconnectedness. And I think if you create an environment where there is the opportunity to be successful and innovative and creative, which incorporates things like diet, things like innovation on our part as faculty and staff, the outcome I think is more favorable than the comment here that basically is pessimistic at best. So any final thoughts from Mr. Wyatt?
Well, I think the bottom line is, not to make this too complicated. I mean, I talk a lot about different foods and what they do, and basically, if you just eat a diet that's rich in fruits and vegetables, and eat them as whole foods, and when you go grocery shopping, shop around the edge of the supermarket, and don't go in the center. That's where all the processed stuff is. Eat food as it appears in nature, and that's what your body wants. That's what it needs, and that's where all the nutrition is. And when you feel better, you're going to go on to do great things, and that's all we need. So.
Well, thank you all for your attention, and presentation will be online, as you'll see if you're watching it online, that it is online, as well as the handouts and any other information that we talked about today. So again, thank you, and have a good day. I'm also the cameraman.